today's video, I'm going to give you 5 things to focus on in your 20s to really help you lay that solid financial foundation. And I'm just generally speaking because you can do this at any point when you really are starting to work on your finances. But I will just say these are the first things that you need to be doing in order to build that foundation. First, make sure you have at least $500 to $1,000 saved up as your initial emergency fund. You don't have to focus so much on the 3 to 6 months because that can be really overwhelming at first, and there are other things that your money can go towards that can really help you besides having a very large chunk of money sitting in the bank. And I do think that larger chunk is important, but there are some other things to focus on first. That brings us to step number 2, which is to consider your goals and focus on the big picture first, say 10 years out, and then peel that back and see what you can do in a 5-year, 3-year, 1-year, and 6-month time frame to start getting yourself to the point where 10 years from now, if you kind of follow those steps, you will be able to actually reach your goals. Because I see a lot of people that kind of just stumble from one thing to another, and then they look back when they're in their 30s or 40s or 50s and say, I'm not exactly where I planned to be, or I'm not exactly where I want to be. And maybe that is because they didn't actually put a solid plan in place to get where they wanted to go, or they maybe didn't even think of like, what do I really want long term, instead of just finding the next thing that's in front of you. So that's why I think it's very important to early on, as early as you can, start considering your goals and how you want your life to play out, because then you have a much higher chance of actually getting the life that you're happy with and one that you really want. Third, work on increasing your income potential. It's really great to learn to spend less and save more, but having more to work with will make things that much easier for you. One way you can do this is just by Googling highest paid jobs in XYZ industry or jobs that make over 100K, and see which ones interest you more, which ones sound the most fun to you and the most fulfilling to you. And you can also look in your current field of study or the industry that you're in and look a few steps out and see what different income potentials are in that same realm that you're already in, and find out what the requirements are to get into those positions. Because you might just need to get additional certifications or take some online trainings that your company may offer, and that might just bump you into different and much higher paid positions. And if something seems like it's just gonna take way too long or too much for you to do, picture yourself that many years out or that far out and ask yourself, how are you gonna feel after the time passes? Are you gonna look back and think, dang it, I wish I just would have done the thing already so that I could be where I wanna be? Because the time's gonna pass regardless, right? So it's a matter of just doing it if it's going to add value to your life, because 3 years, 4 years, 6 years may seem like a long time when you're just kind of looking at it in the short term. But when you picture your working career, it's gonna be 20, 30, 40 years. It's gonna be a long time that you're working. So a short amount of time in the big picture is really gonna be worth it to get that job in the career that you really want, that pays you the money that will afford the lifestyle that you want. And the next video I'm coming out with is specifically going to be on how to get high paying jobs. So be sure to subscribe if you're new here and tune in for that one because it's coming up next. The fourth thing to do in your 20s or when you're really working on your finances is to sit down and figure out all of the interest rates and balances on all the debt that you have. Your student loans, your credit cards, your car, every single one, and create a debt payoff plan. Know exactly when you'll be out of debt. I'll link a great calculator below that can really help with this process, because if you just go along making the minimum payments, that debt can last you a really long time and you can pay a ton of interest. So I don't want that to happen to you, and just doing a little bit of planning will help avoid that. Tip number 5 is gonna be consider buying a home. This might feel really intimidating to you or something for way down the road, but I really encourage you to at least look into it and run the numbers to see what it would look like compared to what you're paying in rent, because you can start building up some equity. And that is what I did. And it was pretty amazing how that helped with my financial picture. So I bought a house, it was $100,000, but I only put $6,000 down. And I did have to completely empty out my 401k. That's all I had to my name. And I'm not necessarily saying that's what you should do, but for me, it did work out. So kind of think through some different options that you have and talk with somebody if you do need some help with that. But when I bought my house, I lived in it for 3 years. The first year by myself, the second year I had a roommate, and the third year my boyfriend moved in with me. And for those 2 years, I only paid $450 or so in rent. The overall mortgage was like $900 or not. Yeah, I think it was $900, but I paid $450 or $500. That allowed me to really save up some money so that I can put it towards my debts and knock those out. And during the time when I did have my roommate and my boyfriend helping me, he's my husband right now, but when they helped me pay part of the mortgage, I still pretended to myself that I was paying the full amount. And all of that went into either debt or savings. So if you do have a roommate or something, like consider doing that because it does really help. So after the third year, my boyfriend and I moved into an apartment that I really love. It's downtown and it was one that I wanted to live in for so long. And it finally happened. But at that time, I rented out my house for 2 years and then I sold it. And when I sold it, I was able to make $60,000 more than I bought it for. So I sold it for $160,000, and that was just really amazing. I did that in my early 30s is when I sold the house. I think I bought the house when I was in my late 20s. I felt very intimidated by it because I never owned a home growing up, or we didn't own a home. So I wasn't exactly familiar with the process or how it all worked. So it was definitely scary. But luckily I had an excellent realtor and she just helped me through that whole process, and we ran numbers and just saw that I was able to get a 3-bedroom for $900-ish, and I was at that time living in a 2-bedroom for $1,000, and I did have a roommate at that time. So anyway, it could just save you a lot of money. You could sell it for more. There is risk to it, of course, but I at least want you to consider it because it could really elevate you financially for the long term. That's all I have for today. Thanks for tuning in. Let me know in the comments below if you have any questions, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.